Dickens didn't write a Christmas story, he wrote a ghost story. He literally subtitled it that. In 1843, Christmas meant fear, not family. Victorians gathered by candlelight to share tales of the dead, in a world where nearly half of all children never reached adulthood. So why does every modern version erase the terror, the death, the ghostly judgment? Because the original A Christmas Carol is a story about what happens when you ignore the haunting, and this truth has been buried for over a century. Here's the disturbing reality you were never meant to see. Dickens didn't write a Christmas story, he wrote a ghost story. He literally subtitled it that. The cover of Dickens's book did more than promise a cozy holiday. It declared in bold type, "A Christmas Carol in prose being a ghost story of Christmas." That line sits on the title page of the 1843 first edition, published by Chapman and Hall with hand-colored plates, gilt edges, and red and blue ink. Dickens wanted buyers to know exactly what they were getting. A Christmas ghost story, not a sentimental fable. He timed its release for December 19th, days before Christmas, when readers expected new tales of the supernatural in the shops. This was not a marketing gamble. Christmas in Britain had long been the season for ghost stories. Shakespeare's line, "Also, a sad tale's best for winter," one of sprites and goblins, echoed a living tradition. For centuries, families gathered by the fire on Christmas Eve, servants and children pressed close, and the oldest in the room would begin with stories of haunted lanes, restless spirits, and visitations from the dead. By the 1840s, publishers turned that appetite into business. Periodicals like Household Words and All the Year Round, edited by Dickens himself, ran annual Christmas numbers packed with ghost tales. Gift books and illustrated annuals filled December shop windows, promising chills as much as cheer. Dickens was far from alone. Later masters like M.R. James, Sheridan Le Fanu, and Algernon Blackwood wrote ghost stories specifically for Christmas. M.R. James in particular read his most famous tales aloud to friends on Christmas Eve at King's College, Cambridge, setting a pattern for decades of Christmas ghost readings. Even Jerome K. Jerome, near the end of the Victorian era, joked that it is a genial, festive season, and we love to muse upon graves and dead bodies and murders and blood. This was the cultural air Dickens breathed. Christmas meant darkness, long nights when the boundary between the living and the dead felt thin. The subtitle was not a warning, it was a selling point. Chapman and Hall spared no expense on the first edition because the market wanted a story to haunt the season. 6,000 copies sold out by Christmas Eve. The book's success was not just about Scrooge's change. It was about giving Victorian readers exactly what they wanted: terror wrapped in holiday trimmings. So when modern editions drop the subtitle, or when film adaptations open with snow and carols, they are not merely simplifying the story, they are erasing the original promise. Dickens did not smuggle horror into Christmas, he put it front and center, right on the cover. The real question is this: why did we ever forget that? Death lingered in every Victorian parlor, not as a distant concept, but as a daily companion. In the 1840s, the average life expectancy in England and Wales barely reached 40 years. For children, the odds were even grimmer. Registrar General records from the era show that in some towns, nearly half of all children died before their 5th birthday. Epidemics swept through crowded streets. Tuberculosis, cholera, and smallpox carried off sons and daughters, sisters and brothers. In working-class neighborhoods, a single cough could signal the beginning of a family's mourning. Victorian households built rituals around this constant threat. When someone died, mirrors were draped in heavy cloth, a silent warning against the soul becoming trapped inside. Clocks stopped at the hour of death, marking the moment time itself seemed to pause. Black crepe hung on doors, and for widows the rules were unyielding. A year or more in full mourning dress, jet jewelry, even lockets woven from the hair of the deceased. For the living, grief became a uniform, and every street bore its own parade of black. But the most haunting relics are the photographs, small sepia-toned portraits of children posed as if only sleeping. These post-mortem images, now locked behind museum glass, were once displayed on mantels and tucked into family albums. In a world where so many children died so young, a photograph after death might be the only image a parent ever had. The Victorians called it the art of memory. Today it chills the blood. Mourning extended far beyond dress and photographs. Calling cards arrived edged in black, and letters bore thick borders as a public signal of loss. Etiquette manuals outlined the proper length of mourning for every possible relation. Even household objects changed, silver polished dull, curtains drawn, a hush settling over rooms that once echoed with laughter. Death was not hidden away. It shaped daily life, decisions, even the rhythm of the year. For Dickens's readers, the idea of supernatural visitation was not a parlor trick or a fireside amusement. The threat of judgment, of seeing the dead return with unfinished business, felt plausible in a culture saturated with loss. When Scrooge is warned of his fate, when he sees visions of graves and hears the rattle of chains, the terror is not metaphorical. It is the dread that haunted every Victorian home where the next knock on the door might bring news of another chair left empty. This was the world into which Dickens released his ghost story, and it is the world that gives its horrors their bite. A brass knocker twists into a face. Marley's mouth opens and the room freezes. Scrooge watches as his old partner drags a chain behind him. Cash boxes, ledgers, steel purses, keys. The links clatter and scrape across the floor. Marley's voice cuts through the gloom. I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will. Each word lands like a blow. Marley is not a warning from the past. He is the future Scrooge cannot escape. No space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunity misused. Outside, the street is silent. Inside, the air grows colder. Marley's agony is endless. He is condemned to wander, powerless to help the living, tormented by the sight of suffering he can never ease. The chains are not symbolic. For Dickens's readers, they were the tools of damnation, the price of a life spent in selfishness. Scrooge, for the first time, feels the weight of his own invisible chain. The clock strikes 1. The room blurs and a pale figure appears, flickering like candlelight. The ghost of Christmas past stands before him. Its hand is gentle, but its power is absolute. Scrooge is not invited to remember, he is forced. The ghost leads him back to a barren schoolroom where a small boy sits alone at a desk as other children rush home to warmth and laughter. The boy reads by a dying fire, abandoned for the holidays. The loneliness is not softened. Dickens lingers on the isolation, the echo of footsteps fading down the corridor. A door bursts open. Scrooge's sister Fan arrives, breathless with excitement, to bring him home. She is kindness in a world of cold. But Dickens does not let the moment rest. Fan will die young, leaving behind a son, Fred, whose cheer Scrooge resents. The past is not a comfort. It is a wound that never healed. The ghost presses on. Scrooge sees himself as a young apprentice, laughing at Fezziwig's Christmas party. Then he sees Belle, the woman he once loved. She stands before him, calm and sorrowful. Another idol has displaced me, she says. A golden one. Money has become his god. Belle leaves, and Scrooge watches her life move on without him. Children, warmth, a family he will never have. The pain is sharp, fresh, inescapable. He begs the spirit to stop. Leave me, take me back, haunt me no longer. But the ghost does not relent. These are not lessons, they are punishments. Marley's chains were forged from greed. Scrooge's chains are built from regret. The night is far from over, and the worst is yet to come. A jolly giant in a green robe, crowned with holly, holds court over the Cratchit's feast in nearly every film version. But Dickens' Ghost of Christmas Present is no simple spirit of good cheer. Near the end of their journey, the spirit's laughter fades. He opens his robe, and what crouches beneath is not comfort, but horror. Dickens describes them plainly. They were a boy and girl, a yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate, too, in their humility. These are not children from a fairy tale. They are starved, hunched creatures, eyes hollow with hunger and neglect. The boy is ignorance. The girl is want. The ghost does not just reveal them, he indicts everyone who can see. Beware them both and all of their degree, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. It is not Scrooge alone who is threatened, it is every reader who has ever turned away from poverty, every politician who has spoken of the deserving and undeserving poor, every comfortable home that has drawn its curtains against the cold. The warning is sharp as a blade. Social neglect breeds monsters, and those monsters will not stay hidden. Dickens wrote this passage in the shadow of the 1834 Poor Law, which forced the desperate into workhouses designed to punish need. In 1843, the same year he wrote A Christmas Carol, he visited the Field Lane Ragged School and saw children packed into filthy rooms, some so weak they could not stand. The specters of ignorance and want are not symbols. They are the children Dickens saw with his own eyes, real, dying, and ignored. Their faces are carved from the statistics of the time. In some cities, nearly half of all children died before their 5th birthday. The wolfish look is not exaggeration. It is the face of hunger in the richest city in the world. When Scrooge recoils, asking if nothing can be done, the ghost spits his own words back at him. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Every defense, every excuse is stripped away. The spirit is not a guide, but a prosecutor. The charge is neglect. The sentence is doom, not just for Scrooge, but for any society that refuses to see what crouches beneath its own robe of prosperity. Almost every screen adaptation cuts this scene. It is too raw, too political, too direct. But Dickens put it at the heart of his ghost story. Not as a warning to the wicked, but as a last, desperate alarm for the comfortable. The real terror is not supernatural. It is the knowledge that ignorance and want are still with us, waiting in the darkness, hungry and unseen. A black garment sweeps into the room, silent and implacable. The ghost of Christmas yet to come offers no comfort, no words, only a single skeletal hand pointing toward the shadows. This is not a guide, but a verdict. Dickens describes the figure as formless, its face and body hidden, visible only in the gesture that directs Scrooge to witness his own fate. The horror is not in what the spirit says, but in what it shows. A corpse, shrouded and alone, left to be plundered by those who once served him. A laundress pulls bed curtains, rings and all, from around the dead man, laughing that she took them before he was cold. The undertaker's man brings the shirt meant for burial, stripped from the body itself. They haggle over the spoils with old Joe, trading blankets and personal effects for a few coins, with no more respect than they would give to a discarded coat. Only later does Scrooge understand the corpse is his own. He begs the spirit, voice cracking. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only? Dickens emphasizes the words will and may. For Victorians, this was not an abstract fear. The idea of dying unmourned, picked over by strangers, was a real threat. The future the spirit shows is not just personal damnation, but social erasure, a life so empty that even death brings no dignity. The vision shifts. In the Cratchit home, the fire burns low. Mrs. Cratchit sits by the hearth, her work stilled by grief. The little crutch, carefully preserved as if it were a relic, rests beside an empty stool. Bob Cratchit returns from the graveyard, his voice barely a whisper. "My little child, my little child." Dickens gives no comfort, only the ache of loss. For his first readers, the empty chair and silent house were not symbols, they were memories. The future, here, is written in sorrow and absence. Hollywood and publishers spent decades sanding down Dickens' ghost story until only the veneer of Christmas cheer remained. By the mid-20th century, the subtitle had vanished from most covers. The 1938 GM film drops the phrase entirely and skips over the most disturbing scenes. No ignorance and want, no corpse stripped for profit, just a brisk journey from grump to good cheer. The 1951 British film, often praised for its darkness, still tucks away ignorance and want in a blink and miss moment, softening Dickens' fury into a passing shudder. Disney's versions, from Mickey to Muppets, erase the horror altogether. The ghost of Christmas Present becomes a jolly giant with no starving children at his feet, and Marley's torment is rewritten as slapstick. The chains remain, but the threat of eternal punishment is replaced by a catchy tune. For most of the 20th century, even the book itself was stripped of its warning. School editions, Penguin, Oxford, and Bantam all filed it simply as a Christmas carol. Generations grew up never seeing the words "Ghost Story of Christmas" on a cover or a classroom handout. The message was clear: this was a tale for family gatherings, not a midnight haunting. But the original story refuses to stay buried. In the last 2 decades, scholars and collectors have started to restore Dickens' full title. The Morgan Library's facsimile shouts, "Being a Ghost Story of Christmas" in bold type. New annotated editions and museum volumes put the subtitle front and center, inviting readers to reclaim the dread that Dickens intended. The trend is growing, but it's still a corrective, a reminder that the story we celebrate was always meant to unsettle as much as to uplift. The ghosts are returning to Christmas, one restored title page at a time. Today, over 170 years later, we still edit out the discomfort, ignoring the warning Dickens buried beneath the tinsel. As poverty quietly rises again, the ghosts he conjured are no less real. The true horror isn't in chains or shadows, but in how easily we forget what haunts us. The story's darkness endures just outside the candlelight, waiting to be seen. Share your thoughts on the real message below.